Brian, how you doing, man?
Good.
When you drafted those kids back in the day, did you say to yourself, you know what, one day I'm going to be at the ceremony where we're retiring their numbers?
No, we knew they were going to be good players, but the hardware they won and the individual trophies and scoring titles, we didn't foresee that. And anyone who tells you we did is stretching the truth.
Is there some satisfaction, though, to being back in Vancouver, like 21 years after you drafted them for this kind of celebration?
Well, these kids deserve a lot of credit. I mean, they're fantastic players. They're better people. They're so active in the community. They're just wonderful. So, to me, I take great satisfaction in their careers. Most of what they did was after I had left. But they've been great players in our league, and they've been even better people off the ice.
You were around early in their career in Vancouver, and I remember there were those around there who didn't think they were ready, didn't believe in them. When did you know these guys were real?
Well, their first year, Danny had 20 goals, but really they got knocked around a lot, and they didn't produce a lot of points their first couple of years. They didn't come the first year. So the first year after we drafted them, they went back and played in Moto. But when they came over, they were slow starters. It took them a few years to get used to it. But you could see, even as rookies, we had the West Coast Express line, so they got shielded from the first unit and the first defense pair. And they would wear down the second defense pair, which is usually your first PK unit. By the end of the second period, their tongues would be dragging on the ice. These guys would cycle the puck all night. They never got scored on. So Mark Crawford kept throwing them out there. And Mark Crawford kept saying to me, don't worry about these kids. Don't quit on them. They're going to be fine.
Brian Burke here on Tim and Sid ahead of the Sedin's retirement tonight at Rogers Arena.
And fine they were.
Yes, they were. Burke, there may be a really simple explanation for this, but I'm curious. It lists in that 1999 draft Daniel going second, Henrik going third. Was there any specific reason why those two names had to go in that order, or is that just the way the NHL filtered it out?
No, we picked them. We had Danny rated higher. Just about every team in the league had Daniel rated higher because he was a better goal scorer. So we picked them 2 and 3. And I say to people, I say, well, it was sheer genius that draft. I said, well, if I was that smart, I would have got him in the right order because Henrik was actually a better player than Danny. And so they wanted high numbers, and I said, no, you're not on my teams. No one wears high numbers. So I said, take 22 and 33, and that's what they did. And now no one's ever going to wear those numbers again. Not here anyway.
Well, they are going up to the rafters tonight. Brian Burke joining us from Vancouver. I've told you before that at the time I thought it was a shtick. Like I thought it was a marketing ploy to bring in a pair of twins. But what put the idea of keeping them together in your mind going into that draft?
Well, the World Junior was in Winnipeg that year, and they weren't that good. They finished second and third in the tournament in scoring, but they got all their points against lesser teams. In the 2 games that mattered against Canada and the U.S., they did not play well. They got knocked down a lot. And I left the World Juniors in Winnipeg, and I told our scouts I'm trading the pick, which, that breaks your heart. These guys work so hard all year, and you get a high pick, and you're going to trade it. But I hated that first round. If anyone looks at it, it's the worst first round in the history of the National Hockey League.
Brian, at any point after that draft, was there any doubt that this wasn't the right move?
No, we believe these kids. I think there's a lot of revisionist history. I think guys look back and say things that aren't true. But I can tell you we never doubted these kids. We didn't know they'd be this great, but we knew they'd be good, effective players. And they were, even as rookies when they weren't scoring. They never got scored on. They wore out the second unit on the other team. And you could see the offense was going to come. So there's never any doubt in our minds. Plenty of doubt in the marketplace. Plenty of doubt in the media.
Yeah, without a doubt. And there were names being thrown out. It's interesting to me because now, as you look back, you're right. The revisionist history is being done, and you kind of know all the stories. You kind of got to know them well. What jumped out at you about the human beings behind the hockey players that Canucks fans might not know about or should be focusing on as their numbers go to the rafters?
Well, the year after I drafted them, I went over to watch them play in Moto, and they were terrible. And I said to Thomas Gradin, I was so mad I wouldn't go down and talk to him. I said, you go down and talk to him, and if they both don't have the flu, I'm getting fired. And before I get fired, I'm going to fire you. So he went down and talked to him, and he came back up, and he was smiling. He said, you're going to like the answer. They stayed up till 4 o'clock studying for a calculus exam. They were still in high school. They're straight-A students, great kids. They just had character. The family has character.
Brian Burke here on Tim and Sid. What teammates of theirs, Berkey, did you personally see have the most influence on these two in the early years?
Well, part of the reason we were comfortable making the deal is we had a good support system for them here with Swedish players. We had Marcus Naslund, who's a wonderful captain. We had Matthias Olin, who's a great teammate. And so we felt they'd have a support system as soon as they got here, and they did. I think Trent Klatt probably was the best player with them early on. Then Anson Carter had a couple of big years playing with them. But whoever played on that wing, it's a magical position. You're going to get points.
Yeah, it was. It was like the gift that keeps on giving. I said it yesterday, and I still feel like the 2011 Stanley Cup Final was one of the worst officiated Stanley Cup Finals that I have watched. Did you think going into that Bruins-Canucks series that the Canucks were going to win the Stanley Cup?
Well, I did, because everyone held serve in that series. Everyone won their home games, and there's a GM meeting between games 3 and 4, so I went to game 3. So the Bruins lost here in overtime and then lost by 1 goal. Then went to Boston and thumped the Canucks twice. Then back to Vancouver. Vancouver wins. Back to Boston. They get thumped again. I thought they would hold serve and win Game 7. So I was really disappointed for the Twins. They weren't able to do that.
Was part of the way that series went the way it was officiated? Because, I mean, they were eating lefts. They needed a Brian Burke speech is what they needed.
Well, I hate to blame the Zebras for an outcome. You get a Game 7 at home, you got to find a way to win it.
Right.
It's that simple, and they didn't do it.
Brian, the fan base now, because I'm sure you spent a few days around town. You've heard people talk. You've talked to some fans. They're in they're a first place team.
Yeah.
But obviously, it's been a tough week and a half or so. How are people in the market feeling about this specific group?
Well, Vancouver's a weird market because you've got this kind of schizo fringe on the social media, and Travis Green lost 3 games in a row, and they're talking about making a coaching change. I mean, it's ridiculous. But the 90% of the fan base believe in this team. They're legit first place. They've got an unbelievable goaltending. They've got really good young players. So I think the average fan here thinks this team has a chance to do something.
Brian, it is going to be a phenomenal night. We appreciate the time and enjoy it. You're part of this. Will never be denied. This is going to be special for you, and we're happy for you. Enjoy it.
Thank you. I intend to. Thanks.